Steve. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Hey, listen, you've done quite a bit in your past. Give the viewers a little synopsis of kind of where you were and where you are now, just so they have an idea of who you are.
Wow. Okay, Ralph. Great question. I grew up in Indiana, kind of cut my teeth in the family electrical business, left the family business and wandered, had a number of wonderful opportunities in leadership, business development, and sales, and ended up with a full-time leadership position with a national ministry, CBMC, and really got a chance to really do some wonderful things there. But I spent 10 years there, 7 of which I was National Director of Field Ministry, and I got to participate in a national leadership development program and just some wonderful things. And then from there, I started the company that I'm with now, Ambassador Development Group. We started about 5 years ago.
Okay.
We did our first acquisition. We actually invest and operate and manage businesses, and we've just acquired our 4th company last March. So we actually currently operate 3 operating companies. One of our acquisitions was an internal acquisition. So that's where we are today. I'm with the company Ambassador Development Group, a managing partner in an investment management firm.
Well, that's fascinating. And full disclosure, CBMC, who you were with for 10 years, are actually the people producing this year's Queen City Leaders Summit, working with the CBMC Charlotte director, Bill Montross, who I believe you're friends with.
That is correct. Yeah, Bill is a very good friend, and he and I go way back when he came on staff with CBMC, as well as he is a great friend and an advisor in our company.
Nice. Well, that's a great connection. Well, what I liked about all of that is it had something to do with leadership throughout the, program that you've lived, which obviously is your life. So that's what we're talking about today is leadership. We're getting people to understand what leadership is, and more importantly, on why they would be compelled to attend something like the Queen City Leaders Summit. And one of the things I always like to ask everyone that I interview for the Leadership Drip is, in your opinion, what are some of the values of a leader?
Wow, that is a great question. I think probably one of the greatest values that I am still learning and working on is humility. Yeah. I think probably being humble enough to acknowledge when we make mistakes is really, really important, because undoubtedly, no matter how qualified, how gifted, how prepared a leader is, we all make mistakes.
That's right.
And I think being humble enough to acknowledge that, admit it, also being humble enough to listen to others around us is, I believe there's wisdom in the counsel, the multitude of counsel. And I think it takes some humility. And again, I'm work in progress, but I do believe that is a really critical attribute for a leader. I think another one is to be real. I think being real and authentic and being approachable makes just it much easier, one, for a leader to communicate, but it also makes it much easier for those around us to communicate with us and feel as if we've been reached, is by being real, and that involves listening. I think that's probably a key component of being a good leader, is being able to listen, because that shows respect for others, taking an interest in others and being respectful to others. I found as a leader, unless I'm going to rely on myself entirely to do everything, one of the greatest, opportunities we have as leaders is to be able to work through others. And right. The way we do that is we take an interest in others and develop others. And
what you're talking about is servant leadership, and I really like how you've described all that. I mean, it is with humility, it's with vulnerability, it's with consistency, it's with listening, and that's something that's changed. When I served in the United States Navy submarine service back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was really all but a command and control leadership, and it worked, and there was a reason for that. But we are seeing the more servant leadership now in today's culture. And you talked about, failing and how leaders fail. In your mind, when it comes to failing and succeeding, what would you say to somebody who's a leader or an aspiring leader as it relates to failing and succeeding in leadership?
Okay, great question. This is one man's opinion, but here's my answer to that. Here's what failure looks like: making a mistake and giving up.
Wow.
That, in my mind, is failure. And just the opposite. Leaders, you're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. And one of the greatest attributes, I think, as we learned as far as entrepreneurs and leadership, is perseverance.
Right.
We make a mistake, we show some humility, we acknowledge it, we make adjustments, and we move on. And I think perseverance and never giving up and keep fighting are the single greatest attribute, one as a leader, but also as an entrepreneur. As we see, and even in the world we live in today, we're seeing things don't go as planned. And I've never met a leader that has never made any mistakes and that their business plan has worked according to the first draft.
That's right. No, you're so right. And man, you talk about what we're going through today, and everybody knows this is where character is created. None of us like to go through it. Just like when the sword is being created, it doesn't like to go through the fire. But in order for that thing to be a war weapon, it has to. And so, the character development, the perseverance that you spoke of, that ultimately creates the hope, which is really what this country has done such a good job of throughout all of these crises. Hey, listen, last question before we part, and that is one of inspiration. I always like to ask the leaders, especially those like yourself who have done so much for so many, what inspires you? Where do you get your inspiration from?
Okay, well, that is a great question. I honestly can tell you I get my inspiration from the Bible, which is God's Word, which is the greatest single source of inspiration in my life, and wise counselors. I learned many, many years ago that having people that have been there and done that and made mistakes before me and had some successes before me, I can learn an awful lot from people like that. And I learned that at a pretty young age, even before I really began my faith journey. But since my faith journey, it's become even more increasingly important. But having a multitude of counselors around me is tremendously important to the way I do go about my business on a daily basis. And again, back to that, time with my Lord, time in the Bible is another great source, the single greatest source in my life of inspiration that I subscribe to on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I couldn't agree more. Regardless of your spirituality, the Bible actually is a wonderful leadership book. A lot of people don't even realize it. Again, those who are and aren't Christ followers, that a lot of the leadership principles that are in place today actually come from there. They get their origin from there. And then seeking wise counsel, especially from people who have been through it before, that's excellent advice. Hey, listen, thank you so much for being on the program today. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate what you've done and what you continue to do. And I wish you the very best.
Ralph, thank you very much. My pleasure. Enjoyed being here.